Master of Darkness. Now, I'm just going to come out and say it. Master of Darkness is pretty much just a clone of the Castlevania series from Konami. Except, I feel as though there's a lot more detail into this one. I feel as though Sega wanted to create an answer to Castlevania to say that the NES also has great titles, including Castlevania, but Sega didn't have anything like that for the Master System, so they wanted to branch out, and in my opinion, I think Master of Darkness is better, despite Castlevania having so many titles before and after of the release of Masters of Darkness. I think Masters of Darkness is pretty good, and here's why. The developers of this game company was called Sims, and at the time they did work for Sega, so technically this is a Sega game franchise. In the game, you play as a psychologist by the name of Ferdinand Social, and one night he was messing around with a Ouija board and reads on the message that Dracula has risen. So guess what? It's your job to go out and stop the Prince of Darkness. Now, before I go any further, I bet there's a few of you who thought, why did Sega create or try to attempt to make their own Castlevania when Castlevania itself is such a successful series and Master System was pretty much only just scratching the console market? Why did they attempt it? Well, my theory is, in the early 90s, the Master System was begging for attention. The sales for both the Master System and the Mega Drive not doing so well as they should, and we all know what happened to the Mega Drive success. But when Sega realised what was popular on the NES, my best guess is someone saw Castlevania for the NES and thought, yep, let's do it, let's make our own version. However, what I can see is they didn't just make their own Castlevania, they more or less surpassed it. Now, for any Castlevania nut fans out there who say, stop, what are you doing? It can't possibly be true. Castlevania is a remarkable series. It is. I agree with you. Calm the shit down. But I'm going to tell you why I think Master of Darkness kind of surpassed Castlevania. Castlevania is a classical series. I enjoy it a lot. However, I enjoy this game a lot. I'm going to tell you why. I don't want any fucking fan rage, okay? The Master System is for fact a more powerful system than the NES. It's fact. It's evident compared to the two that the Masters of Darkness has way more colours and far more detail, plenty of animation, and if you look closely you can clearly see the trees blowing in the wind, the water flowing, and posters coming off from loose seams. There's a lot of detail into this game, and I have to commend them for putting so much attention into the visuals. Visuals aside, that the original Castlevania series was very appealing. Some of the levels had this lovely blue and orange feel that complemented each other. However, the Master of Darkness series has so much detail, as I just said, so it's hard to compare the two, apart from the gameplay, which I'm going to get into now. The gameplay is very similar to Castlevania. The one noticeable thing is the floating heads. When you attack them, they drop an item. Much like when you attack a candle in Castlevania, it may drop an item. And sometimes it's a weapon. However, caution is advised, as you may not always get the better weapon. Much like in the Castlevania series, if you pick up the knife, you may go ballistic because of how crap it is. The sound effects don't really play a huge role in this title, but in my mind, the scenery and the music make up for it. Speaking of the music, I found there are mixed opinions about the soundtrack. Some people love it, and others say it's just noise. To me, the soundtrack is fantastic, although I have to admit it does get repetitive. On the subject of the soundtrack, Castlevania had loads of good music, and at the start of every Castlevania game there's always a fantastic track. However, as I said before, the Master of Darkness series does get a little bit repetitive. It's good music, but they don't seem to diverse, and they seem to only stay in one area of beats and harmonising those tunes. So, I feel as though this situation is a Marmite, because I like it, but some people hate it. Depends what kind of person you are. When I compare the two games for adventure, I have to say Master of Darkness has way more diversity. For one, Castlevania just has you walking through a huge castle, which by itself is fantastic, don't get me wrong, but there's something about travelling through the English countryside for me, and being treated with a story arc throughout and facing many memorable enemies, that makes me feel like I put myself in the game. The feel is very arcade, but with the story, you can use your imagination to fill in the gaps. If you notice any, that is, and for someone like me, I like that a lot. Even though the Castlevania franchise made way more sales, in fact it's still going today, the fact that they even managed to make a dent in the market with their own version is outstanding. Nintendo at the time was a giant, and the Master System, well, let's face it, was a small boat compared to the Titanic of the market of the NES. The very idea that trying to stand up to the NES with their own version of Castlevania was brave, and they pulled it off. In my eyes, that makes them winners. And if the Master of Darkness series was happened to be reborn, I would totally play it. Thank you for sticking around, and I hope you enjoyed the show. Make sure to like my Facebook, follow my Twitter, and subscribe to my channel to get the latest updates from me whenever you like. Like I said before, I hope you enjoyed this, and I'll see you next time. Bye bye!